Yeah, well, yeah. I don't know about Kafka. Of course, I admire Kafka and I love his stories, but I'm a bit nervous about this when you start mentioning Kafka, because in one of the reviews of this book, when it came out in 2001, the headline was Kafka Light.
Oh.
But it was meant very nicely. It was in a positive way. But I didn't quite like it. No.
Sure.
Like Coke Light.
This seems like a good moment to invite audience questions. If anybody has something they are curious to ask of Bragi.
Curious about the language translated from the Icelandic. Is that similar to Danish or a variation of Danish? And my second question would be, what do the people in Iceland read? What do they buy in the bookstores? What do they have in the libraries? Do they have international literature? In what languages?
Yeah, the first question, Danish is probably, you could say that it is a variation of Icelandic. So it's the other way around. Yeah, because the Icelandic is the oldest Nordic language. I mean, since the Middle Ages, it's still very much like it was then. I mean, you can easily read texts 700, 800 years old texts, but that you can't do in other Scandinavian countries. But probably Norwegian is more like Icelandic than Danish is. Yeah, and then about what we does that answer it? Yeah, but basically we just read the same things as other Europeans do, but we definitely, I think, according to what Chad tells me about these 3% of published books in America are international literature, which is a very low percentage. I think the percentage maybe in Iceland would be, I don't know, 50, 60%, because we, no, it's not that big, maybe 30%, but we read a lot of foreign literature. Yeah, well, mostly in English, but also in the other European languages. But then we have lots of translations. Yeah.
If I'm right in remembering it, I think Iceland has more books published per head than any other country in the world, as far as I hear. There was another hand I saw. Yes.
Do you feel that contemporary Icelandic poetry has moved in the same way that those have into post-Locksmith era and post-Saga era?
You mean if it's if it has followed modern trends, or? Yes, it has, but it did so quite late compared to other countries, compared to Europe and America. Like in the 50s, the so-called Icelandic modernist poets, they were mainly looking towards T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot was the main influence, and sometimes it was rather embarrassing how great an influence he had on Icelandic poets. I mean, the modernist influences came quite late to Iceland, probably because of this old poetic tradition that we have. In the 1940s, everybody was using rhyme still. You weren't allowed to call yourself a poet unless you rhymed your poems. But I think today, I mean, we are just as on the same levels, sort of like as other countries.
Yeah, a question over there, and then over on this side.
No, actually, no. I didn't have to. I still remembered how some fabrics felt, or some things, how I didn't have to touch them while I was writing, if that's what you mean. Yeah, but it's very, this limited view, I think it gives you an advantage. It makes your imagination work harder, and that's I would like to write more novels from that point of view. Like I told Chad, I think I would like all my novels to be told in this way, from under the bed. Maybe I next go under a car.
There's another question over here.
No, I mean, these types are very, I mean, they're not rare. I mean, not only in Iceland, I guess here as well. I mean, because this guy, he is, he is about 30, 35 years old, and he has a child, but he doesn't live with the mother. And this is, if I was single today, this would be the thing I would do if I won the lottery. I would not maybe at this very moment, because everything is so expensive, but I would go abroad to New York or London and just spend my money on DVDs and books, and so it's quite natural, normal for this guy to do this. You don't think so, or? Actually, he didn't spend all the money on this. I mean, it's just maybe just one, because he won 1 million kroners, and I imagine that he spent maybe 100,000 kroners. So it's not all of it. So maybe he bought a car after he came out from under the bed,
right?
Or bought another bed because because in the end something happens on the bed that could have destroyed it.
Any more questions? One here and then one at the back.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I mean, if you take Halldór Laxness, he is a much his view is much like broader. His characters go all over. But I would say probably this is an influence from Pinter and other playwrights. For example, Edward Albee. I mean, he's not in his earlier plays, and he's not unlike Pinter in that sense. So I think this has probably had an influence on me, like using a very